This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. What meal instantly brings you back to childhood? Maybe it's a dish you made with your grandparents or something that's been passed down through generations. This hour, I'm joined by two local children's authors who share a belief in food's ability to connect us and unlock our memories. We'll talk about their latest novels, the challenges they faced in the publishing industry that often pigeonholes writers of color, and how they approach writing about complex emotions for young readers. I'm joined by Debbie Machiko-Florence. Debbie is the author of more than 25 books for children and tweens. Some of her middle grade novels include Just Be Cool, Jenny Sakai, the Last Chance Academy series, and the Jasmine Taguchi series. Debbie, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And also with us is Kayla Collins. Kayla is a local author and creative communications consultant, and her debut novel is called Food is Love. Kayla, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Debbie, before we hear more about your books, kind of want to start with your personal journey. Did you always know you wanted to be an author or writer?
I get that question a lot. I did not. As a young child, I loved to read, and I started writing stories as soon as I could hold a pencil and write words. My mom saved everything.
Wow.
But it wasn't until much later that I thought of being a writer as a career. I didn't show my work to anybody. These were stories only for myself. So I went off to college, got my degree in zoology, went back and got my teacher's certificate, and taught school for a while. And then I worked as an educator at a zoo. And then when I got married, my husband's job took us to Mexico, and I couldn't keep my job. And I thought, what else do I love to do? And that's when I decided I was going to try and become an author of children's books. And I thought I can do this. And I wrote some short stories. I won some contests. And I said, oh, wow, this is easy. And then I decided to start writing novels. And 15 years later, and many rejections later, I had my first book published. And I always joke about I'm making up for lost time and just writing all the books now.
Well, it's so fascinating to me because I feel like a lot of authors' journeys, it's either you knew from the get-go or something happens, life happens, things are going on, and then you're like, well, I like writing. That's always something that I wanted to do, but never thought of it as an actual career. So how did you decide that middle grade or middle school grade books are the way to go for you? What was it about that age that speaks to you?
Well, I like to talk about how I was turned into a reader and a writer because of books. It was my third grade teacher who turned me into a reader because she had a reading nook with all these books, and we got to read all the time. And then my fourth and fifth grade teacher turned me into a writer. And when I decided to write books, I wanted to write from the perspective of a young person. And I always joke about how inside I'm still 12, 13, 14 years old.
Oh, I say that a lot, actually. Yeah. It makes me happy to hear you say that.
I think it's because when I look back on my childhood, those are the years that still pop out very strongly to me, all those emotions. And, between that and feeling like I really connect to that inner child of myself and the honor and the privilege it is to help turn young people into readers, that's where I put my focus. And I, to this day, when I close my eyes, I'm 12, 13, 14 years old.
And I love that. Right? What about you, Kayla? Is there anything that Debbie said that resonates with you? How did you become a writer?
Well, I thought it was interesting that you saw writing as something for yourself. I also felt that way. Like writing for me was always a hobby. And then it wasn't really until college. I got an editorial internship for Taste the Style, which was a lifestyle blog that transitioned into the Chill Times, which was more of a wellness lifestyle editorial hub. And then that whole thing was going with the opening of Chill House. I was an intern for Cindy Ramirez, who owns Chill House, and she was the person who told me, like, Kayla, you're a hell of a writer. And it wasn't really until she said that where it clicked in my mind, like, oh, people really like my perspective and how I package things with my words. And from there, I just took writing more seriously. It became more than a hobby.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I really liked what you said about still feeling like you're 13 inside. I feel like we don't ever leave who we are. Like there's still little parts of us, like little sparks. Like if I see a butterfly, I get excited like my 5-year-old self, or if I'm annoyed, I brood like my 15-year-old self. So it's like you don't leave those parts of you behind. They're still in there. So it's like this idea of still having that inner child, inner teenager. It's always there.
That's such a great way to describe it, where different moments of your life today, you're channeling the emotions of yourself when you're a different age.
Yeah.
I often reference to my high school self because that's my emo period. So whenever I'm feeling a little emo, that's the time that I go to. And then because so you also, Kayla, you also wrote for children, and you have a copy of your book in front of us today. How did it feel to hold a physical copy of Food is Love in your hands for the first time?
It felt amazing. Like I started off as a studio artist, so there's always this idea of being able to take nothing and make something beautiful that you can physically hold in your hands. I don't know, it's almost like an outer body experience. Like it's like you're birthing something into the world. Yeah. So being able to take something that's not tangible from your imagination and to be able to say, look, it's here in the physical world. Like it's so exciting.
It is amazing that you have this, it's in your head.
Yeah.
And then you pour it out of you
Yes.
on the page. And then there's this physical thing. I always talk about how it's mine, and then all of a sudden it's not. It belongs to the reader. So now you have this book that belongs to the readers out there.
Well, and then Debbie, you have so many books under your name as we speak. Do you still get that moment? What was the first moment like for you when you realized that what was in your head is now physically in pages?
Yeah, it will never get old. It will never get old. But yeah, the first time, for me, my first book was a chapter book series, the Jasmine Taguchi series, and I had had such a long journey to publication. So each step was so emotional for me. Like when my editor said, we're going to have the illustrator draw some pictures of Jasmine, can you describe her to me? And I was like, she's a third grader and she's Japanese American. Right. Because I didn't really envision that. So we went back and forth. She's a very spunky character. And the illustrator, the first time I saw the pictures of her, I cried because it was like seeing my baby for the first time and holding the book in my hand and seeing it on the bookshelf for the first time, or signing my book every single step has been truly emotional. And I still, for every single book that comes out, I still feel like that.
Well, and then there are, of course, so many stories to choose from, but can you tell us about your most recent book, Last Chance Academy, A Study in Secrets? So without spoiling too much, what should readers expect when they pick up this book?
First and foremost is a mystery. It's a mystery/treasure hunt set in a fictional boarding school called Leland Chase Academy, and the kids there call it Last Chance Academy because they have been kicked out of their schools or had to leave their schools for various reasons. And this is their family saying, this is your last chance to kind of get your act together. It's also a story about friendship. Almost all of my books deal with friendship. It's a topic that fascinates me. Relationships, friendships, how you make new friends, how you grow new friendships, what happens when you change and grow apart, or if you get in a fight. So I say Last Chance Academy is mystery, friendship, scavenger hunt.
Well, and then Kayla, your debut book is called Food is Love, and we'll definitely be talking about food. But as Debbie is describing, I was just thinking your book also has relationships, and it took me on this journey that I didn't expect. So without giving away too much as well, what is it about?
So at its core, Food is Love honestly really is about you and your family. What I want people to get out of this is when they read the book, they see themselves, they see their memories, they see their family. It's about the importance of keeping family traditions alive. It's a tangible way to handle grief. It's also the history of food. It talks about like actual history, how we went from homemade to pre-made, to the dinner table, to the TV table, and from the home to the drive-through. Like it's actual history of how food has changed over time. But it's really just steeped in love and family ties. And like I said, when people read this, it's really about you and your family, because you see yourself. And I've had so many people say, you know, they read it and they're like, oh, I thought about my grandmother, and, you know, I need to start doing things to keep family traditions alive. So, yeah.
Well, I think going through the history was really fascinating, too, of how food has progressed in our relationship with food. And can you tell me more about Katori, the main character in Food is Love?
Yes. So Katori is a tomboy. I was a tomboy growing up. I have an older brother, so I always played with him and his friends. But I wanted to have a character that reminded me of myself when I was younger. I felt like I was very bold, and I didn't really care too many about other people's opinions. It was just like, I was just so curious and adventurous, and I wanted to kind of put that in a character that can inspire other kids to feel brave and just curious all throughout their life. I feel like once you get older, people want you to be less curious and to not ask questions. But I think, you know, questions are so important. Discovering new things are important. And I hope that this character is someone that can instill bravery in people who read about her.
Well, that's really not going to work for me since I ask questions for a living. Well, then, Debbie, because food is also a theme that weaves throughout many of your books. You know, why is that? What is it about food that you felt was important to center in a lot of your stories?
Well, I think like Kayla, like your title of your book, Food is Love. I feel like that's what it is. Food is community, it's family, it brings people together, first with family and then with friendships. And also, I love to eat, and I love food. So even if my book, like for Jasmine Taguchi Mochi Queen, it's very much about food. It's about a girl who has a family, who has this family tradition of making mochi traditionally from scratch, and there's a boy's job and a girl's job, and she very much wants to do the boy's job of pounding the mochi. So mochi and food is central to the book. But even in my other books where it might not be about food, I always write about something that they love. Chocolate for Keiko Carter. She loves chocolate. There's boba tea. And I always like to describe people eating. In fact, friends always say that they get hungry reading my books. I love to write food scenes. So for me, food is just a way of bringing people together.
Well, I appreciate a writer who likes to describe that, actually, because it's sort of does it progress the story? Maybe not, but there's something about it that makes the story that much more, trying to find the words here, but that much more relatable, I think. And I like experiencing it too, actually, with the characters. So when I was reading Mochi Queen, which I adored, which also has a theme of bravery, I think both of you really have this common theme with your characters, is all I wanted was mochi. And I did get mochi, so thank you for the inspiration, Debbie. But that for readers who are interested, there's also a recipe for mochi in the back of one of your books, Mochi Queen, as you just mentioned.
Yes.
So how did you decide to include that?
Well, okay, now I'm going to have to, like, true confessions of a writer here.
That's what we're here for.
So when I was writing the chapter book, I really wanted to be a young adult, upper middle grade author. And when I came up with the idea for Jasmine, it was Jasmine talking in my head. And I knew this story about a girl who wanted to do something before her older sister. Her older sister's bossy and gets to do everything first and be the expert. And this was an opportunity for Jasmine to be an expert before her sister, because the women in the family shaped the mochi, and Jasmine decided, if I do the boy's job, pound the mochi, I'll be the expert before my sister. So I knew that it wasn't a middle grade novel, it wasn't a YA novel, it's going to be told from a younger child's perspective, and that was either going to be a picture book or a chapter book. And I admired picture book authors so much. It would be a whole different animal, but I've been working on novels for so long, I thought, okay, chapter book, I can write. It's a shorter novel. I studied chapter books, and I figured out that 10,000 words was about the length of of a chapter book. And when I wrote the story and revised the story, I just couldn't get it to 10,000. Now, as a new writer, I thought, oh no, I have to make this word count. So I'm like, I know at the end I'll have an activity and kind of an author's note thing, and I'll have a recipe. And that's why the recipe
That is so genius.
That's my confession.
But it worked.
Yes.
But it worked in this concept. And Kayla, because we talk about food as so centric, obviously, to your book, as it's called Food is Love. And you talk about food, the kitchen is a really important part. And I also kind of felt like the kitchen was also a character in of itself. So why is that? What role does food serve in your story?
Food is a way of honoring your ancestors and remembering your loved ones. It's also just memories. Like, even in my own life, like, there are things that I do to this day, like just rolling the lemon to get all of the juices together. That's something that's so small, so simple, but that's something my grandma showed me. And, if I have children, that small act can get passed down, and people don't realize the significance of, being in the kitchen, making those memories. It's just something that I will always remember. The kitchen plays a huge role in, I think, everyone's lives, because serving someone a hot meal is the simplest, easiest forms of showing someone that you love them. You sit down, you have conversations, you laugh, you cry, like it's all at, the table.
Well, I love that you're both smiling and I'm smiling too here, but it's because Debbie just described the sort of intergenerational processes to make mochi. But so, Kayla, you're also describing something that's intergenerational as well. So can you talk about how food is a connector in your family?
Food is definitely a connector. Like, one story that particularly comes to mind is I'm a Leo. My birthday is July 31st. So I always do like big things for my birthday. But there's this one birthday in particular, I just didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to lay low. And it's not like me, because I always, do something. And my grandmother surprised me. She brought like pans of food over. She brought some of my cousins, my aunt and my uncle. And I was so surprised. It was just a simple meal. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was the fact that she surprised me with food. And then I still have this picture. It's my uncle, my two aunts, and my grandma all sitting at the couch with their blankets. And that ended up, I took a picture of them, and that ended up being the last picture I got of them all together living. And I wouldn't have had that memory. I wouldn't have gotten that picture if she didn't bring me food. So it's really a beautiful thing in bringing people together and just memories.
Well, and at the beginning of the show, I had asked our audience what meal transports them back to childhood. Debbie, I'm curious to hear, what is that dish for you?
Oh, that's interesting, because while Kayla was talking about that lemon rolling thing and getting that passed down, in my head, I remembered New Year's is a big celebration in Japanese culture. It's the time that you all get together, and basically you cook all day and then you eat all day with all your families gathered together. And one of the things we always made, or my mom always made, was a sushi, or inari sushi. It's a fried tofu skin, and you tuck the sushi rice inside. We always called it the football. But to make the sushi rice, you needed to fan it to cool it down before you could do anything with it. And my sister and I, our jobs would be with paper fans to stand there and fan the rice. And as we got older, we'd run away, because who wants to
You
stand?
knew.
Your arms would fall down. But when my husband and I cook now for New Year's, and we'll have friends over, I want to fan the rice, because it takes me back to being a kid with my mom and my grandma and my aunts and fanning the rice. So to me, that memory just popped in my head. I haven't thought about that in a while, but
And it's so simple. It's just a small, simple act, and it's like, oh wow, I remember this loved one. That's really what it's all about.
it really is.
What is a food for you that brings you, that just takes you back to a memory or a moment?
Well, when you were talking about fanning your arms falling off, I immediately thought about mac and cheese. My grandmother, when we make mac and cheese, you have to stay by the stove because you don't want it to burn, and you have to constantly stir it. And that's immediately what I thought about. And that's like her signature dish. And I know how to make it. My aunt knows how to make it. Like, it was very important that somebody knew how to make it because her mac and cheese is the best.
And you got to continue those really important traditions.
You have to keep it in the family.
You've been listening to local authors Kayla Collins and Debbie Machiko Florence. After the break, we discuss representation in children's literature. Let us know if you grew up seeing yourself in your favorite books and characters. Let us know what those books were. Leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Are you looking for more bedtime reads for you or your children? We've got 2 local authors of children's and middle grade books for you to put on your radar and your reading list. I'm joined by Debbie Machiko Florence and Kayla Collins. So, Debbie, earlier we spoke a little bit about the importance of representation in books, and maybe especially so during childhood, when someone's growing up. Are you hoping that your books will speak to readers, especially Japanese American readers, who are looking to identify with the characters that they're reading about, or even just seeing themselves on book covers, and then they'll go grab the book?
Absolutely. When I was growing up, I loved all kinds of books, particularly Judy Blume and Madeline L'Engle, and I never really saw myself in any of the books except kind of stereotypes, or I was the enemy in World War II books. And then when my daughter was born, there were more opportunities to see Asian Americans in books, Grace Lynn, Lisa Yee, Linda Sue Park. And I was like, oh, this is really great. I wish I had had that. So when it was time for me to write my stories, I really wanted to write about a Japanese American contemporary girl, very much like the child I was. I grew up in Los Angeles at a time when I had a very large Japanese American community and diverse friends. And because I grew up that way, I knew very much I was Japanese American, but didn't really, think about it too much. And it wasn't until I moved out of California and I started having these experiences of being the other, telling me I spoke English really well, or how long have I lived in this country? It just really confused me. So when I was starting to write, I really wanted to write from my perspective growing up. And it wasn't until I started getting the rejections for the books, and basically one editor had said, oh, we really love multicultural books, but because of your focus on Jasmine's culture and history, we feel that this is not a widely appealing book, and in that sense saying that, only Japanese Americans would like the book. And of course, that isn't the case. And I have had Japanese Americans come up to me, adults, teary-eyed, saying that they had wished that they had had books like this when they were growing up, but they were happy to be able to hand it off to their children to read, or Asian Americans in general, or all kids, because even though that Jasmine's dealing with certain Japanese American cultural traditions, the things that she's experiencing in each book, trying to do something before her bossy older sister, having a friend be mad at her, wanting to be really good at a talent show, that's all children. And we all feel the same things. At our core, we feel all the same things, and we're all the same, humans. But I feel it's so important to be able to see yourself in the pages of a book, or see your neighbor in the pages of the book. And to know that even though we may look differently or have different cultural traditions, that we're all alike. But yes, it's so important to be able to see yourself.
Well, I think it's interesting because I feel like we're at a crossroads where we are seeing more of who you need to see on those covers, the stories that you're reading. And I feel very similar in the sense of, even though there are certain books or certain movies or TV shows that have specific cultures, but if you really look into it, there's a lot of universal themes. I mean, as we were talking about today, who doesn't love food? First of all, we actually need food. So right,
Yeah.
right. And then it's like I'm finding it's such a super fascinating time right now to see what kinds of medias are available to all of us. And Kayla, you've written that one of your goals is to highlight protagonists of color. So can you talk about what it means to you to personally see more characters like Katori in books, and also that you can create someone like Katori for other people to read?
Absolutely. Just going off what you said, it's not only important for the people that look like the characters to see them be the protagonists, but it's also important for people of other races to see them as the protagonists. It gives a better worldview. When it comes to my storytelling, I want to highlight protagonists of color without the story or the premise being about their color. There's this balance where it's like I have to honor and have the responsibility of showcasing people that identify with the way that I look or my cultural identity in stories and have them be the main character. But on the other side, the color of their skin or their culture isn't necessarily the point. It's really just having a very good story that people can identify with and see themselves in. I don't identify being, British or a white male, but I love Harry Potter. I can see myself in Hogwarts.
Right.
And, just even culturally, like right now, like with the recent movie Sinners, we got to see like the wild box office success. And I feel like that's one, because it was an original story. We're literally in remake culture right now. And two, that it just was a good story.
And do you think that that's sort of part of a process of breaking barriers, especially when certain cultures somehow are seen as a monolith? But we know that I think every single culture that does not exist.
Yeah. When I think of storytelling, I just try to be honest to myself, and I just try to write the best story that I can possibly write. I know that it means something to somebody visually, but going back to talking about the themes of what the character is going through, everybody needs to learn how to be brave. Everyone needs to have confidence. There's other things that I can't talk about because it's outside of the children's book, but like there's just other themes that I think that so many people can gain from it. But like I said, it really just all boils down to balance, being able to highlight the characters of color, but also letting them know that they have full lives that aren't just steeped in their color.
Absolutely. We are not our pain.
Yeah.
We have friendships and fall in love and get hungry and get angry. And I feel like being Japanese American is a thread that weaves through everything I say and do and think and feel, but it is not the thing that I am only.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important what you were saying is having books out there with protagonists of color, but not having it be about the struggle or an immigration story or dealing with racism. And it could be woven in there, but it doesn't have to be, this is what the story is about. And I think we need to see more of that. It's very important to have stories about immigration and history and all of that, absolutely, but it's also important to have the other stories. Like one of the things about Last Chance Academy, the main character is Japanese American. And but when it's not a Japanese American story, I'm doing air quotes here while I'm in a radio show, but and that's why I say first and foremost, it's a mystery story. It's a fun romp. It's a scavenger hunt. It's friendship. But I think it's very important that she is Japanese American.
Yeah.
Well, and with what you're saying, Debbie, here, and just kind of building on that in terms of as you continue to navigate that, tell your stories. How are you sort of breaking some of that expectation with the publishing industry that they place on authors of color that, there are certain themes that you should hit. There are certain stories that you should tell, just like both of you were sharing it's not just about immigration, it's not just about pain. Are there things that you are doing to break that? Or is part of just by you being present and continuing to write these stories part of that?
I feel very strongly that as long as you're writing the stories of your heart and things that are important to you, that should be the main focus. I've been asked to write, can you write a World War II story or a Japanese food story, which I do have one book out there. This is How I Roll, about a girl who makes cute rice balls.
I love that name.
The rolling the
Well, now we
sushi.
want rice balls.
Yes. But if it's something I want to tell, okay. Yeah. But if you're asking me or telling me I can only write about this certain thing, then no, I don't want to write about. I'll write about pain, but I want to write about the pain that's meaningful to me. So for me, I will say no. If it's something that I don't want to write, I will say no. If it's something that intrigues me, I will consider it. But personally, I like better me coming up with the ideas, me writing the book or the proposal, and then my agent selling it that way. But I think sometimes it's hard for publishing to, like, how do I market this book? Sure. It's a mystery, but she's Asian. And yeah, I think that's going to be something the publishing industry at large, I think, has to do a better job of marketing stories by and about people of color or marginalized voices in an equal way to the other stories that are out there.
Yeah. Well, then we're going to talk about ideas that you both did come up on your own. Is Kayla, you tackle a very heavy topic in Food is Love, which is grief. Yeah. And I was sharing earlier that it definitely took me on a journey that I didn't expect in the best way possible, but I definitely came away with it with a lot of feelings. So how did you go about making grief accessible for such a young audience?
I just want to say children are a lot smarter than adults give them credit for. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's easy to stray away from difficult topics, but it really all boils down to the packaging. I'm very big into imagery, so like to give you a parallel, it's like milk. Like milk, you have your almond milk, you have your formula, you have, everyone can drink milk, but it has to be packaged differently. Everyone can talk about grief, but it has to be packaged differently so it can be digested properly. And that goes for any theme. I just think that food for me has always been a pathway to my family memories, and I feel like the best way you can honor your loved ones is to keep their memory alive, and you do that through food. We shouldn't shy away from having hard conversations with children. You just have to be mindful of how you're packaging it.
Well, and Debbie, your character, Meg Mitsuno from Last Chance Academy, also is navigating grief. So what was your thought process in terms of incorporating that?
So here's another author confession.
We love these.
So it's funny when people say, oh, your book is about grief or you're dealing with grief. In the beginning, when people were saying that, I was very surprised. I'm like, what? No, it's a fun romp. It's a scavenger hunt. It's friendship. But yes, Meg is dealing with the loss of her mother. Her mother has died 2 years prior to the start of the book. And why is that? You might wonder. Well, I had the idea for a scavenger hunt taking place in a boarding school, and I needed my main character to be sent to a boarding school. Why would she be sent to a boarding school? Well, I wanted her not be troubled, but why would she get kicked out of school? Oh, because she's doing poorly. Why is she doing poorly? And I keep asking my questions, and she lost a parent, and she's dealing with that, and so she's struggling in school, and then she gets sent. That's how the grief story came about. Mm-hmm. But yes, she is dealing with that throughout the story. It's not at the foremost front of the story, but it informs who she is and why she makes the decisions she's making. And like Kayla says, I think kids are smarter and more able to handle things than we give them credit for. And we deal with grief. Kids deal with grief. There's stuffed animal tears, or they lose a pet, or maybe they lose a loved one, but or best friend stops talking to them. Those are all forms of grief. And I feel like when we deal with it in our stories, it helps kids relate to it, and they can figure it out on their own.
You've been listening to local authors Debbie Michiko Florence and Kayla Collins. Coming up, they give us a sneak peek into their latest works. And let us know if you're an aspiring author or if you have questions about publishing. Leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. All hour, we've been joined by two Connecticut authors. Debbie Michiko Florence is the author of more than 24 children's and middle grade books, including Last Chance Academy, A Study in Secrets. And Kayla Collins is the author of Food is Love. We've been exploring themes of food, belonging, and identity. So, Debbie, you've picked out an excerpt from your novel, Last Chance Academy, A Study in Secrets. So before we get a chance to hear it, can you set it up for us?
Sure. So 12-year-old Meg Mizuno she lost her mother 2 years prior to the start of the book. Her dad travels a lot, so he sent her off to live with her aunt, her horrible aunt. And that made her even more miserable. So she started doing very poorly in school and actually cutting classes. So her dad finds her this exclusive boarding school and sends her off to do better. And she feels like she's being sent away, but he's trying to help her. And she has decided she's not going to make friends. And all she wants to do is somehow convince her dad to bring her back home. And all the other students in this school, it's a very small school, 35 students, are there because they're done with their chances and they all have to do well. And so she is just going to skate by, not get kicked out, but also not make friends.
Go ahead.
I crawl into bed and Sir Gray, the cat, hops up onto me. He purrs, making my chest rumble. I stroke his soft fur, happy that I at least have him. Pets don't disappoint you. Pets don't abandon you, not like people. Good night, Tana says as she reaches over to her lamp. Just as Tana switches off the light, a flash of silver slides under our door. Tana hops out of bed and follows me to the door. On the floor are 2 silver envelopes. I turn one over. In curly script is written, Tana Rabin. I flip the other, and my heart leaps when I see Megumi Mizuno written in the same handwriting. Tana and I lock eyes, and in the dim light, I can see her hesitation. What if it's something bad? Tana says. So what? It's still interesting. I slide my fingernail under the flap of my envelope and unseal it. Inside is a stiff piece of charcoal-colored paper printed with silver ink. I skim the note. You are cordially invited to play and win an all-expenses-paid luxury vacation to California over winter break. There are only 3 rules. 1. For the entirety of the game, no matter if you are playing or eliminated, if any administrator, staff, RA, or 12th-year student discovers what you're up to, the game is off. Don't ruin it for others. 2. There are 10 silver envelopes hidden in a book. Take only one. 10 participants will move on to the next round. 3. Have fun. Small print. Good luck. What is this? Tana whispers, reading the same words on her invitation. I smile. It's a treasure hunt.
I think Kayla and I are both like, where's our envelope?
Yeah.
That sounds like a good time. Well, then, Kayla, you also picked out an expert from your novel, Food is Love. What should listeners know what they're about to hear? And we will be hearing some sound effects. Can you also talk about your partnership with Novel Effect?
Yes. So Novel Effect is an app. They were featured on Shark Tank, and it's voice recognition. So you can read my book from any page, any sentence, and it'll play a dedicated soundscape. So if I say it's raining, you'll hear the thunder. And what makes it even more special is that I've actually had some of my family members do the voiceovers, which you'll get to hear. And that's why I picked this specific excerpt. So this is Food is Love by Kayla Collins. Fire is a very powerful thing that is both dangerous and beautiful. For cave people, fire was a sign that they were going to eat. We are the only living creatures that learned how to cook with fire. When the cave people learned to cook, it changed the history of food forever. That's why, before her grandmother could finish her sentence, the cave started to tremble and rocks started to break apart.
Grandma, what's happening?
Run, Katori!
Run!
Her grandma yelled as the cave started to collapse. They ran to the end of the cave where Katori saw a small light that was coming through a hole. She started digging with her hands and moving rocks out of the way. Once she had a big enough space, she started to climb through it. When she got all the way through, she turned around to help pull her grandma out, but the cave was gone. And she was on a kitchen floor in someone's house, but everything looked odd and everything was shaped like food.
Well, both of you have these amazing stories that I think listeners are going to want to pick up. Debbie, as we sort of look into the future, are you especially looking forward to anything in the coming months?
I am working on new projects. I have a picture book biography coming out this November called Monster Maker, The Strange Creatures of Mark Nagata, about a Japanese-American man who makes kaiju figurines. And it's pretty awesome. And of course, I'm working on book 2 of Last Chance Academy, and I think I can reveal the title, even though it's not been officially revealed. It's called The Mastermind's Trap, and it'll come out in March of next year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I wish I knew the kaiju thing because I almost wore a kaiju shirt today.
Oh, that would have been perfect.
Missed opportunity next time. And Kayla, what are you looking forward to in the coming months? Any more books on the horizon, projects you're working on that you can share with us?
Yes, so immediately I will be changing the front and back cover of my current children's book, Food is Love, and I'm going to be adding in some extra pages, which will serve as the Scrook book. And in the book, I talk about a Scrook book, which is a scrapbook cookbook. It's trademarked. And I will be having games and recipes inside the limited edition of the book. For longer term, I'm actually drafting a chapter book series where Katori has a lot more adventures. I'm very excited because she's going to be getting older, she's going to be growing, and I want the readers to be able to grow with Katori. So it all starts with Food is Love and then grows into middle grade, young YA. So that's what I'm working on as far as the book front. And then I'm like a baby content creator. I just made my debut because as an author, we want to hide.
Yep.
But I started my TikTok channel and I'm doing something new where it's like the Anti-TV Network where every month I do a new mini show. You can follow me at Famous Storyteller TV and there'll be a new show every month.
Fun.
And really quickly, before I want to get to final thoughts from both of you, but in terms of incorporating sound with your storytelling, can you tell us a little bit about what that process was like? You know, why did you decide to do that? Because it's definitely a different experience hearing you read it versus reading the picture book.
I have always loved music. My dad was actually a DJ.
Oh, cool.
So I'm very tied to music in that way. So when I saw that this was an option, I was just very excited about it. And I was very hands-on with this entire process because there's time travel. I got to pull, Jimi Hendrix references, Jackson 5 references. Like, I was very particular in, what types of sounds I wanted to go with the different time periods. And it was just so fun. And as far as I know, I think that Food is Love is the longest book that is with Novel Effect right now. It's awesome. People love it, and I'm excited for you guys to read it with Novel Effect.
That's fun.
I know it's funny because when I was reading that book, I was hearing Jasmine punching or pounding mochi in my head.
Oh, yeah.
So that could be
That would
a
be
fun.
cool.
Yeah, you might have to get on that, Debbie. And as we kind of wind down here because we're having so much fun, I know we can talk for days about all the things that we've been talking about today. But is there something that you hope our listeners take away from this conversation today, whether it's about the themes or for listeners who love writing and reading, any advice you can give them or a new recipe? I know I'm asking a lot.
Recipe, no. My husband does all the cooking. I hope that our listeners will give all books a chance and not judge a book by the cover and think, oh, that book's not for me. If it's something that's intriguing, pick it up, give it a chance, read it. That's how you find your favorite books and your favorite authors.
And what about for those who are aspiring writers or people who hope to publish one day?
Read lots of books, because I feel like the more you read, you kind of absorb how stories go. And there are workshops and how-to books out there. Go for that. And for me, it was a long process, perseverance, and follow your heart and follow your dreams.
Well, and for people who might not be familiar with your work, we've talked about quite a few today. What book would you recommend them to start with?
Oh, my goodness. That's like saying, who's your favorite child?
I know. I try to not ask that question.
I know. Well, I would say start with Last Chance Academy. It's my newest baby. It's my first foray into mystery. My other middle grade novels are, I also love, of course, they're friendship and first crush stories for those young people who are love romance but are not quite ready for, romance.
Sure.
Those stories are very sweet first crush stories.
And Kayla, what about yourself? Any advice for listeners who love writing and aspiring to be authors, but not quite sure if they have it, what it takes to become one?
Absolutely. I was not formally trained, and I was able to publish a book. I'm fully indie. People really love the book. I think the biggest thing I want people to know if you're an aspiring writer is there's no right or wrong way when it comes to your writing process. The way that I think is very much like a detective board where there's lots of pictures and strings and pins. And sometimes you just have to be open to any and everything because you can get inspiration anywhere. And that will be like the last puzzle piece to put it all together. So just be open to conversations around you, the people that you meet, the places that you are. Pay attention to your senses. Because that can be a mode of inspiration. Like I said, there's no one right way to write.
So it sounds like keep curious, right?
Yeah, always stay curious.
You've been listening to Kayla Collins, author of Food is Love. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You are also listening to Debbie Machiko-Florence, who's the author of books for children and middle grade readers, including Last Chance, A Study in Secrets. Debbie, appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both for sharing your stories with us. And we'll link to both of their books on our website at ctpublic.org/wherewelive. So check it out. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Chloe Wynn. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Thank you all so much for listening, and happy reading and happy writing, everyone.